I am running to be president for all of America, not half of America, because there is no victory in winning for half of America.
Breaking tonight, Donald Trump takes the stage for the first time since an attempt on his life.
I stand before you in this arena only by the grace of Almighty God.
Following that shocking moment, a vow to fight and a promise to unify. Tonight, his message to his party and his country.
We rise together or we fall apart.
With just over 100 days until America votes, the Republicans crown their leader while Democrats are divided over theirs. Our correspondents are inside the convention to make sense of this moment in a dramatic race already unlike any other.
From CBC News, this is The National with Chief Correspondent Adrian Arsenault.
Thank you for joining us. Donald Trump is one step closer in his fight to reclaim the White House. Tonight, formally accepting the Republican nomination for president, giving his first speech tonight after surviving an attempted assassination.
I'm not supposed to be here tonight. Not supposed to be here.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
I stand before you in this arena only by the grace of Almighty God.
In a speech that lasted more than 90 minutes, Trump began subdued, sharing a deeply personal account of last Saturday's attack. While part of his speech focused on a message of unity, it then shifted to the Donald Trump of MAGA, boastful big promises and false claims. Before that balloon drop, celebrating his run for the presidency. So watching it all unfold right with us, someone who's right there, Katie Simpson. Katie, can you walk us through the key moments of the speech?
You know, Donald Trump really set the tone off the start, saying he wants to be president for all Americans. There's no point in being president for half the country. And his speech tonight started off as a speech to all Americans, and then it turned into a speech that was really for the people who were inside this room and not necessarily going to appeal beyond that. Donald Trump's tone started, he appeared somber, he was trying to appear restrained as he told Americans his firsthand account of what it's like to survive an assassination attempt. Inside this arena where thousands and thousands of people were, his most enthusiastic supporters were in this room, they were silent with the odd cheer of praise God as Donald Trump was going step by step, recounting as he was standing on that stage when he was hit in the ear by that bullet, how he dropped to the ground and the Secret Service jumped on him to protect him. He then described the moment that has now become the rallying cry for his base.
The crowd was confused because they thought I was dead, and there was great, great sorrow. I could see that on their faces as I looked out. They didn't know I was looking out. They thought it was over. But I could see it, and I wanted to do something to let them know I was okay. I raised my right arm, looked at the thousands and thousands of people that were breathlessly waiting, and started shouting, "Fight, fight, fight." Thank you.
You can see it from the Trump supporters in the crowd there. That is the thing we heard over and over this past week when you talk to people. They saw the image of Donald Trump on that stage with his fist in the air, and they hope to take the momentum, the way that this crowd has been galvanized by that horrific incident on Saturday, and take that build momentum moving into the next phase of the election campaign. But when it came to the tone and trying to deliver a unifying message, Adrian, when Trump finished his story about his experience, that's where it kind of ended.
So, Katie, yeah, after he shared that story about what happened, you're right, the tone completely shifted.
Yeah, and we heard the Donald Trump that we hear out on the campaign trail. We heard him, air some of his grievances. It wasn't as much as he typically does when he's out on the campaign trail. We didn't hear the personal insults. He only said Joe Biden's name once. He didn't insult the prosecutors who have led investigations into him. But he did seem to point the finger at Democrats, saying if everyone's looking to me to create a moment of unity, what can the Democrats do? And he seemed to suggest that if the Democrats want unity in this country, that they can use their power, is in sort of his way of putting it, to drop the investigations, the criminal investigations into him. Donald Trump has consistently argued, without presenting any evidence, that all of the criminal charges against him are politically motivated. And he made that pitch again to air that grievance.
We must not criminalize dissent or demonize political disagreement, which is what's been happening in our country lately at a level that nobody has ever seen before. In that spirit, the Democrat Party should immediately stop weaponizing the justice system and labeling their political opponent as an enemy of democracy. Especially since that is not true. In fact, I am the one saving democracy for the people of our country.
Trump also made reference to the 2020 election and his lie that it was stolen from him. So that's what we heard from the grievance side. We also heard him use some divisive language, especially when speaking about immigration.
We also have an illegal immigration crisis, and it's taking place right now as we sit here in this beautiful arena. It's a massive invasion at our southern border that has spread misery, crime, poverty, disease, and destruction to communities all across our land. Nobody's ever seen anything like it.
So it wrapped the way Trump normally wraps his events, with really that same kind of rhetoric we've heard from him throughout his political career.
Thank you so much, Katie Simpson and team in Milwaukee. So here's someone we haven't seen much of throughout Trump's campaign, his wife Melania, shown here earlier at the Republican convention, taking her seat. That was her first and only appearance throughout the last 4 days, opting to stay entirely out of the spotlight. So next, let's bring in Paul Hunter. Paul, a lot of talk about whether we would see a different side of Trump tonight after what happened last weekend.
Yeah, it's perplexing, isn't it? I mean, he had this great big opportunity to redefine himself for the many, many, many millions who'd be tuning in because this was his first big speech since that event. And it's like he tried to have it both ways. We talk about that first part and the second part. And the first part, yeah, different Donald Trump. Second part, same old, same old, same old, right? We've heard all this stuff before. If the idea here was to win over undecideds, to win over the fabled, moms in the suburbs of Philadelphia who might have been Republican once and then fell away, and draw them back in, well, this is the Donald Trump that we've known all along. If everything changed on that Saturday afternoon in Butler, Pennsylvania, right, then in a sense, evidenced here tonight, fact is, nothing changed.
And you've been to lots of these conventions before. There's always something unusual about them, something that you go home and tell your friends about, like, oh, I saw this thing. What was that thing that stood out for you?
That one thing. You know what struck me? I was thinking back to 2016 in Cleveland at this point in the Republican convention then, and he had that speech filled with fear and darkness and crime and illegals and all those things. And you almost felt too afraid to step outside the arena. Like, it's so awful out there. It was stunning. Here, we effectively heard the same thing in that second part of his speech. Maybe a smidge softer, but effectively the same message. Water off duck's back. It's like, I don't feel anything about that. It's like he has normalized all of that. And that, the normalization of all of that, is the America that Donald Trump, in a sense, has created.
Interesting. Paul, your analysis is always appreciated. Thank you, and to your team there in Milwaukee.
Thanks.
Boy, we have a lot to talk about here. Will Donald Trump's message resonate with Americans? I'll have that conversation a little later in the show. But But now let's turn to his opponent, Joe Biden. In a stark contrast to the Republican show of solidarity, Democrats appear divided over their leader, with reports now that Barack Obama is among those advising Joe Biden to bow out. And as Sasha Petrusik explains, Biden seems powerless to stop it.
The first woman vice president.
With Joe Biden down with COVID,
Kamala Harris.
It was up to Vice President Kamala Harris to carry the Democratic campaign for the White House.
You cannot claim you stand for unity if you are pushing an agenda that deprives whole groups of Americans of basic freedoms, opportunity, and dignity.
Going after Republicans with a vigor some say President Joe Biden is missing.
But I think that's where you see someone like Vice President Harris really taking it to Donald Trump.
The timing of Biden's COVID isolation couldn't be worse for Democrats as questions mount about whether the 81-year-old should step aside.
The millionaires pay 1%.
Beginning after a weak debate performance, snowballing as big donors and members of Congress went public.
Again, it's his decision because he has the delegates and the pledged delegates, but frankly, I think there's real concern.
But it's the reports now of growing private concerns deepening Biden's crisis. A former House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, and now former President Barack Obama, all reportedly warning Biden he's likely to lose and bring his party down with him.
Today is a terrible day. If you pull back and look at this thing, strength versus weakness, a bullet couldn't stop Trump. A virus just stopped Biden.
At their convention, seen by jubilant Republicans as weakness.
They know they're fixing to get their teeth kicked in.
Experts say public polls have not reflected a disastrous drop-off in support.
And so I do believe that the race hasn't changed as much as perhaps we would want to think it has.
And publicly, at least, aides say Biden remains steadfast. Sasha Petrusik, CBC News, Toronto.
A wildfire evacuation order is expanding in BC's southern interior tonight after two smaller fires merged into one large blaze.
I'm about 200-300 meters away and I already feel the heat.
So what you're looking at is near Spence's Bridge, that's west of Kamloops. This witness aptly describing the scene as Armageddon. 85 properties are being told to leave right now, as well as several First Nations. Currently, more than 230 fires are burning across the province. Officials warn the next 3 days will be very challenging. Well, that major listeria outbreak is being blamed for at least 2 deaths in Ontario following a Canada-wide recall of some plant-based beverages. Megan Fitzpatrick now with the new warnings and why food-based infections are so dangerous.
The shelves sit empty as the scope of a listeria outbreak becomes clearer.
We want to be sure that everything was swiftly removed so people can rely on the product that we have on our shelves.
This after a nationwide recall of Silk and Great Value almond, oat, and coconut beverages suspected of containing the bacteria. Now, the Public Health Agency of Canada is reporting 2 deaths linked to the outbreak. There are 12 confirmed cases of listeriosis, 10 in Ontario, 1 in Quebec, 1 in Nova Scotia. But the concern is cases could soon rise.
It can be quite some time between eating or drinking the contaminated material and actually getting sick.
Some people get mild symptoms of fever, nausea, and vomiting and may never know they were infected.
There are ways to treat it, but the problem is, of course, that oftentimes you don't suspect it until it's further advanced.
Listeriosis can be fatal, and people who are pregnant or elderly are at greater risk of severe illness. The company that makes the recalled products says it's working with authorities to investigate the cause of contamination. Danone Canada calls news of the deaths devastating and said their sincere sympathies go out to the families and loved ones during this difficult time.
This is a pretty major outbreak, and I think a lot of people are surprised that it's coming from what people would consider sort of a health type of food.
In 2008, 22 people died from a listeria outbreak linked to contaminated meat made by Maple Leaf Foods. That outbreak prompted some changes to food safety, but experts say more progress is needed.
Can we get better point of production testing so that these things don't happen?
As investigators search for the cause of this outbreak, the advice is do not consume any of the recalled products and throw them out immediately or return them to the store. Megan Fitzpatrick, CBC News, Toronto.
Labour Minister and Newfoundland and Labrador MP Seamus O'Regan is resigning from cabinet citing family reasons.
It's just one of those things, you know it when the time comes.
A former TV journalist, O'Regan was first elected alongside the Trudeau government in 2015 and joined cabinet in 2017. He held several portfolios in the years since. O'Regan says he will stay on as MP but will not seek re-election. Sources have told CBC News his replacement as Labour Minister will be Steve McKinnon, currently Leader of the government in the House. Well, Bob Newhart is being remembered tonight for delivering decades of punchlines like few others.
What is this?
Oh, be careful with that.
We look back at the sitcom star and his remarkable legacy next.
How can any of this be fair?
Now, you might think, hey, we just need more doctors, but that's not really it.
A Russian scheme here.
Shows you where it starts, where it ends.
Were you really willing to risk that job? Yes.
At Thunder Bay's favorite festival, Wake the Giant.
Ta-da! There it is.
Play no games. Ha, I'm in my bag. What you gonna do? What you gonna do when I come for you? Let's go. I don't play no games. Ha, you know my name.
Bob Newhart is being remembered tonight as one of the most popular TV stars of his time. His publicist confirmed today the comedian died after a series of short illnesses at the age of 94. Deanna Sumanak-Johnson now with Newhart's legacy of laughter.
We've got a perfect marriage. Emily, a perfect marriage is where the husband and the wife have the same IQ.
If Bob Newhart became famous for playing a regular, straight-laced guy in a world of eccentrics, he came by it honestly.
Feels so good, I'm going to take the afternoon off.
Known for his stammering signature deadpan delivery, Newhart was a fixture on TV for decades. But he actually started far from the spotlight as an accountant before releasing a comedy album that made people take notice. It also opened doors for his long-running, beloved sitcoms. In the 1970s Bob Newhart Show, he played a psychologist. In 1980s Newhart, he was an innkeeper. Different characters with the same core.
You don't hit on a style. I mean, you don't look at the other comedians that are working and say, oh, look, nobody's doing deadpan, so I'll do that. It was just my natural way of working.
A type of character that would inspire comics for generations, including Canada's Brent Butt, creator of Corner Gas, who tells us he made everything seem so real. On his shows, he was this grounding force amid the swirling nuttiness that made it somehow more legitimate than other sitcoms.
Bob Newhart!
But it wasn't until 2013 that Newhart's genius finally won him the award that long eluded him, a Primetime Emmy, when he appeared on The Big Bang Theory.
I thought you were dead.
I am. Oh, it's fantastic.
Even in his late 70s, he got big laughs from CBC audiences.
Appearing tonight is Bob Newhart. No, he's the comedian. No.
Proving that even in the often outrageous world of comedy, the boldest, most lasting act is being true to yourself. Deanna Sumanak-Johnson, CBC News, Toronto.
It's time now to take a closer look at the news shaping our world, and tonight it is all about Donald Trump. Donald Trump officially takes his place atop the Republican presidential ticket.
So tonight, with faith and devotion, I proudly accept your nomination for President of the United States.
The party believes the White House is within its grasp once again, its leader vowing to unify the country.
Look what happened
after a shocking attempt on his life. So what does that look like, and will he deliver? To help guide us through this pivotal moment, we have our panel back again tonight, Brian Stelter, Tia Mitchell, and Richard Madden. So thank you for being here. Whew, Tia, you were in the room. How do people react to the speech?
Well, I think the crowd was very enthusiastic throughout the speech. You know, when he got to certain points, they cheered with him, the drill, baby drill chant and the fight chants. But like with his normal rally speeches, as he gets past that 1 hour mark, people's attention starts to wane a little bit. And we saw that here tonight.
Oh, certainly. I mean, it's now the longest, I think, nominee acceptance speech in the history of the United States, over like an hour and a half long. It started, Tia, with this very different tone from what people are used to from Donald Trump. First time, you know, we heard from him since someone tried to kill him. Why don't we listen to how he described that attack?
I said to myself, wow, what was that? It can only be a bullet. And moved my right hand to my ear, brought it down. My hand was covered with blood. The amazing thing is that prior to the shot, if I had not moved my head at that very last instant, the assassin's bullet would have perfectly hit its mark, and I would not be here tonight. We would not be together.
Tia, I'm curious what you made of his tone there, because looking at it from afar, it seems super quiet in the arena, but you know, the whole speech, somber at the beginning, but still vintage Trump at the end.
Yeah, that's very true. By the end, it was like any other rally speech he's delivered in recent months. But at the beginning, he was somber. He did kind of tell this dramatic retelling of what happened on Saturday. But I think it's interesting in that he focused on kind of giving people a play-by-play of his experience. And he ended by saying, I'm not supposed to be here. You know, that's definitely something that can evoke emotion. But he didn't really talk about his personal emotions, any personal reflections that he has after, you know, going through a threat on his life. And it just shows that sometimes the emotional connection isn't there for Donald Trump. It's still about kind of the theatrics and trying to pull on the emotions, but not really sharing emotions. That's something that really struck me with how he even retold the story from Saturday.
Yeah, it's interesting. Brian, we heard, I think, immediately after the shooting happened, we heard a lot about unity from both Biden and Trump. And again, Donald Trump striking initially this unusual bipartisan tone. And if people didn't hear it the first time, here it is now.
I'm here tonight to lay out a vision for the whole nation, to every citizen, whether you're a young or old man or woman, Democrat, Republican, or independent, black or white, Asian or Hispanic. I extend to you a hand of loyalty and of friendship. Together we will lead America to new heights of greatness like the world has never seen before.
Brian, is that a play for disillusioned Biden voters, and will it work?
To some degree, it is a play for that broader audience, but it's an example of Trump trying to have it both ways. I think he did everyone a favor by reverting to his rally talking points because he reinforced the stakes of this election. Democrats, after having 3 terrible weeks stressed out about Joe Biden, had a pretty good night. As they were watching this speech, they felt better about their chances, although many Democrats still believe it'd be better to replace Biden with a different candidate. But this speech reminds everyone that Donald Trump is almost 80 years old. He has been repeating the same lines and lies for many years. He has been cast by Democrats as a loser, a cheater, a felon, and a liar. Tonight's message from Trump was, I'm a warrior for you, and I'm the victim of attacks, including one very, very real criminal attack. The message was all over the place, though, and he's trying to have it both ways by talking unity in one minute, but also talking about the terrible state of the world or America the next minute.
I was scribbling down a lot of notes about how terrible things are right now and how they will only get better if he's there. There is a consistency that's kind of interesting. I gather, and Tia, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that there's a mural somewhere at the convention that says they're not coming for me, they're coming for you. I'm just standing in the way.
Yeah.
I think, you know, he talked tonight as well about, he didn't say I was under attack, they were shooting at us. Again, a nod to that.
Yeah, that's a big theme. Again, that's something we've heard from him for months on the campaign trail. And I think, again, among his base, it's really resonated. They do believe that the fight for Trump is a fight bigger than just electing him president. It's about a way of life. It's about, for people who think and, quite frankly, look like them. Brian said earlier, this is a very white male-focused convention.
Yes.
You know, for them, a lot of what Trump preaches is that it's preserving their way of life. He's fighting for them. But again, yes, he's tried to create this unifying, more universal message. But when you listen to what he says, because there was a lot of policy that he shared today, he's really got one certain type of American in mind that he's hoping to benefit. And there are other types of Americans that might not feel so seen in the direction that Trump wants to take the country.
Yeah, no doubt. I think there were people in foreign capitals as well who were taking notes and maybe nervous. Richard, there was a noted sort of standing ovation in Milwaukee. You know, he talked about J.D. Vance, he talked about his stance on Ukraine, and then he vowed that not only would the war not have happened had he been there, but it will certainly end if he's in charge. Can we have a listen to that clip?
I was the first president in modern times to start no new wars. You know, we were the toughest, we were the most respected. Viktor Orban, Prime Minister of Hungary, very tough man. He said, I don't want people coming into my country and blowing up our shopping centers and killing people. But they said to him, tell us what's going wrong, what's happening, what is it? He said, there's only one way you're going to solve it. You got to bring President Trump back.
Okay, so how interesting is that, Richard? Applause in Milwaukee for Viktor Orban, you know, a strong man who recently met with Putin. Richard, if you're Justin Trudeau in Ottawa, or if you're Vladimir Zelensky in Kyiv, who, as CNN reports, has a call with Trump tomorrow, what is the international community taking away from that?
Yeah, that was red meat to the base. Obviously, Viktor Orban is a celebrity of the hard right. This obviously is going to make some moderate wing of the Republicans nervous if they still exist. Orban is accused of abusing his power and stripping pillars of democracy, slowly ushering in a form of authoritarian rule in Hungary. He's also a harsh critic of the EU's support for Ukraine. So clearly this has got to raise a couple alarm bells among the NATO alliance, because both Trump and Orban have a few things in common. They both brag about their cozy friendships with Russian President Putin and their lukewarm support of NATO. So while the Western alliance might be concerned, this is a good sign if you're the Kremlin. That's already praised Trump's pick for his running mate, J.D. Vance, who is one of the strongest voices in the Senate to block U.S. aid to Ukraine. So for Trump to throw out his friendship with Viktor Orban is, as I mentioned off the top, it's red meat to the base. But if you are a moderate and you're trying to broaden your tent, you're wanting Trump to broaden the tent, this would be kind of a worrying person to raise as one of your pals in that speech.
For people at home, just so you know, when a speech like this is coming out, there is often an embargoed copy that you get, that so you can check what the speech that's actually delivered against the notes. And it wasn't long before you might as well have tossed that out, because Donald Trump just went into, you know, unscripted moments. And here's an example of one of those.
107% of those jobs are taken by illegal aliens. And you know who's being hurt the most by millions of people pouring into our country? The black population and the Hispanic population, because they're taking the jobs from our black population, our Hispanic population, and they're also taking them from unions.
Brian, focused a lot on illegal immigration, offered a lot of numbers that don't seem known to nature. I'm wondering what's at play here, and if you could talk about not only that, but why the ad lib? Why not stick with the speech?
Yeah, the fact checks are underway now, and they're going to take a long time because there was a lot that was gibberish in this speech. Trump described a dystopian America, reminiscent of his phrase American carnage from his inauguration day. He said the country is being invaded by terrorists. He said Washington is a killing field. He implied that if you go to the Washington Monument, you will be stabbed, you'll be murdered. I happen to love Washington, D.C. I hope everybody watching can visit if they haven't already. It has its problems, but it's an incredible city, and you're not going to get stabbed or killed there when you visit Washington, D.C. That kind of fear-mongering from Donald Trump is vintage Trump. He knows it is a way to appeal to his base, but I don't know how it would broaden his appeal. And I think when we think about this long, meandering speech that went after midnight East Coast time, a time when most Americans are turning off the TV, going to bed, or watching late-night comics, you ask yourself, how did it widen his fan base? How did it broaden his appeal? And I think the answer is that it probably didn't. It may have rallied up his base, but it didn't widen, didn't expand that base. And to your point about why did he go off script so many times? I counted more than 100 times when he was deviating from his prepared remarks. Why? Because it made him feel good. He was bored reading his teleprompter speech. I could tell in his voice. He was monotone. He was bored by his own words. He went off script and ad-libbed to rally up the audience and to rally up himself. And to give him a moment of grace, he's coming off of this horrible assassination attempt. This was his first moment speaking in public in a big way since then. He understandably had a lot to say. But I think here's the takeaway about the American election right now. Two elderly men who don't want to leave the stage, Biden and Trump. That's what they have in common tonight.
Tia, very briefly, I only have about 20 seconds here. When you leave Milwaukee, what are you going to tell people about what you saw?
Well, I think I'm going to tell people that I saw a unified and energetic Republican Party, and I saw a Donald Trump that is somewhat reflective on what happened last weekend, but is still the same Donald Trump, not really changed. And the final point is it's time for Democrats to get their act together because they're coming up against the Republican Party that seems focused, unified, and ready to charge ahead. They are literally counting down the days to the election.
Okay, Tia Mitchell, Richard Madden, Brian Stelter, as always, thank you. Stick around if you don't mind, because we're going to turn our attention to Donald Trump's opponent, Joe Biden. He has vowed to stay in the race, but could that change as the pressure grows? That's next. As Joe Biden fights COVID and growing calls to step aside, reports now that he's more open to listening.
A bullet couldn't stop Trump. A virus just stopped Biden.
While his VP delivers an energetic speech, her attention squarely on the Republicans.
If you claim to stand for unity, you need to do more than just use the word.
Democrats, though, are still seeking that unity within their own party. All right, Tia, Brian, and Richard are back. Brian, Donald Trump used Joe Biden's name, his last name, only once in an hour and a half. And then when he did it, he said, I wasn't going to do it, and I'm not going to do it again. Right. What was that about?
That was a clever scripting strategy by Trump's speechwriters. They weren't going to have Trump mention Biden at all because they assume Biden's going to be replaced. Trump was almost able to go through with it, but as he ad-libbed tonight, he mentioned Biden, and then he was self-aware enough to catch himself when he was doing it. The point is that the Republicans don't know who they're up against. They don't think it's going to be Biden, but it's anybody's guess right now. The pressure on Biden's intense. As you reported, there are all these Democratic leaders going to Biden, urging him to step aside, but we don't know what he's going to do.
Richard, I know you're in Washington and you follow this very closely. Do you have an update for us? Like, where is it this evening?
Yeah, the walls are clearly closing in on Joe Biden's leadership. And when you have top Democrats like a Nancy Pelosi, like a Barack Obama, urging him to reconsider, I think he's going to spend this weekend in isolation, really taking a second look at his legacy and how he wants to leave the condition of his party as they head into November. There is some buzz here in D.C., some pundits, and we're hearing it on cable television, that perhaps President Biden might make a decision by Monday. I just got an update about an hour ago from the White House. Biden has no public events scheduled tomorrow on Friday. Normally he'd be on the campaign trail or doing something, but he is clearly laying low. So the pressure is really on President Biden. But one thing about covering the Biden White House, and one thing you talk to anybody in Biden world, Joe Biden is stubborn. When he's pushed, he digs in, and that's what we're seeing right now. But it looks like the pressure is getting to him. The New York Times is reporting that he is possibly open to a leadership change, although no decision yet. But this next 24 to 48 to 72 hours will be critical for President Biden.
Also for his health. I mean, you know, it's not a surprise, I suppose, he doesn't have any events tomorrow. He has COVID. We understand. I think he's taking Paxlovid and needs some time to recover as well, I would presume. In the interim, in the absence of seeing him, we've been seeing a lot of Vice President Harris. But Tia, she must be walking a very fine line here. You know, what's her strategy at this point?
Yeah, well, she has no choice but to remain loyal to President Biden as long as he's running for re-election, because if people even get a whiff or a rumor that she's trying to take him out, that could cause people to turn on her. That could, quite frankly, ruin the relationship that she needs with him, no matter what happens moving forward. So she has to play the part right now of a happy vice president, a happy right hand who is there. Also, she's the one on the trail right now representing the Biden-Harris ticket. So she's got to stay true to that. She's got to be the one giving a strong performance for supporters so that they can hopefully stick with Democrats. There are so many questions. Now, I think should Biden step aside, she will hope to be the party's nominee. And again, there are a whole lot of complications as to what happens if Biden steps aside. That's a whole nother discussion. But it would be hard not for Kamala Harris to not be the nominee. But right now, she's just got to wait, bide her time, and stick with what is current. That's Biden is the nominee. She is the vice presidential candidate.
This is a brutal news cycle. It's moving at the speed of sound. Thank you all for guiding us through this convention. Tia Mitchell, Richard Madden, and Brian Stelter. We will talk to you again at the DNC just a few weeks away.
You bet. Thanks.
All right, let's turn now to France, where Team Canada swimmers have arrived for the Olympic Games, but took a special trip just days before they are set to compete.
Just sitting there, and I was like, I can't believe that we're here for a swim meet.
How they honored Canadian veterans in our moment. We are 1 week away from the Paris 2024 Olympics, and in between the training and preparation, Canada's swim team made a very special journey. They went to Juno Beach, the team that is working so hard to do Canada proud, coming face to face with the valor and sacrifice of Canadian soldiers 80 years ago, and that is our moment. Many of these swimmers are as young as the soldiers who once stormed the beach, a fact not lost on three-time Olympian Sydney Pickram.
I was just sitting there, and I was like, I can't believe that we're here for a swim meet. And like what people had to do to come here and to fight for everything for the Canadians.
They toured the Juno Beach Center, Yuri Kissel dedicating a poppy to his grandfather who fought in France.
It's pretty amazing being here. I'd always reflect on my grandfather and try to imagine what he went through. And coming to this museum and seeing the footage I saw really kind of helps paint that picture a little more clearly.
And the center's director said Canada's soldiers and its Olympians are united by the same values, even if they came to the beach for very different reasons.
I just wish the veterans were here to see it. I really would, and from where they are, I'm sure they're very proud.
Good for them. CBC is your home for Paris 2024. We'll have all the major events across our platforms, including the opening ceremony on July 26. I'll be there hosting alongside Scott Russell. And tune in all next week as we bring you the National from Paris in the lead up to the Olympics. Thank you for being with us. You can watch the National anywhere, anytime on the free CBC News app and subscribe to the National's YouTube channel. I'm Adrienne Arsenault. Take care.